And we're going to read verse 1 and 3. Genesis chapter 45, verse 1 and 3. You guys have it? Okay. Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, he calls every man to go out from me, and there he stood, no man with him, while Joseph made himself known to his brothers, to his brethren. And he wept aloud, and the Egyptians and the house of Pharaoh heard. And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence. Let's stop right there. So, we already talked about Joseph in here many times, right? And how Joseph was the favorite son of Jacob, right? And in the stories that we talked about, we know that the jealousy that his brothers had towards Joseph. And we talked about how they despised him, they hated him, and they tried to get rid of him, right? They actually wanted to kill him, but his brother Judah and they said they didn't want to spill brother's blood. They want to be cursed, so they sold him. Remember? So they sold him, and we know the story that after they sold him, he had a lot of troubles going. He was a servant, he was a slave, and then after trying to imagine you're a free person, let's say for 20 years, and then automatically everything is taken away from you, your house, your family, everything. You go to a place where nobody knows you, and then not only that, but they treat you like an animal. You have no rights. Even worse than an animal, you have to work. You never really worked in your life. Now you got to really work. They hate you. They don't even feed you right. They do all the things that slaves went through. And then but the story that we read a while back, we know that he was able to overcome all that, right? He was able to overcome, and then he became the favorite Potiphar. And then Potiphar actually made him what? The master of his house. So he was succeeding. And when he was succeeding, then what happened? Then he got accused of a crime. With his wife, with Potiphar's wife. He got accused of a crime. And back then, it was automatically a death sentence. There was no, there was no explanation either. If for any reason there was any kind of hint that you try to do anything against your master's house, you automatically was killed. Because you were cheap. You're like, I can just buy another one. But we know that Joseph was very special, so there was something for him. And he was accused falsely. So he overcame that. He was not killed. They sent him where? To jail. Right? After they sent him to jail, he prospered right there. You can say, he was able to control the jails. And, the cupbearer and then the baker came. You guys remember that? I'm doing a little recap on Joseph quick. So, and they have dreams, and then Joseph interprets the dreams, and then the baker, he told him that he was gonna get hanged, and the cupbearer was gonna be restored back to the court with the Pharaoh. So after that, remember that the Pharaoh had dreams, and nobody could interpret it, so they sent Joseph for him, and after they sent Joseph for him, he was able to interpret the dreams. So it went from being like a bad experience in life, terrible experience, and then little by little he was trying to get like they say in football, his momentum, and then things went bad for him, but then he was able to overachieve those troubles areas. So now he's a master of what? He's the second master in Egypt. Pharaoh gives him the ring of he makes him his second in command of the entire land of Egypt. So now he's in a position where now he's like, okay, now I'm like good, and my life is getting better. They give him a wife, so they give him a wife. They give him a place to stay a nice place to stay. They give him servants. They give him, he becomes from a slave to, the second person. So it's a pretty big step. Um, and we can see that everything is going good for him now again, you know. But then what happens? You know, his brothers showed up, and that's where we're gonna focus on that little part. So his brothers show up, and he doesn't know how to really take it in a way. So right there in 45, let's continue reading. We left in verse 3, right? And now let's go to 4. And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph, your brother, who ye sold into Egypt. Now therefore, be not grieved nor angry with yourself, that I said that ye sold me, either by God did send me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years halted the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years in which there shall neither be hearing nor harvest. And God sent me before you to preserve you and posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by the great deliverance. So we can see that we're reading that Joseph, from being, everything is being taken from him. His family was taken from him. When they say you don't know what you have until you don't have it anymore. That's a very famous expression, Once when we went to Africa years ago, we went to this village where people live very like in mud huts, like little houses made of mud and sticks, and we passed through there, and we were talking to some people there, and I'm all like, I saw inside of one of them, and there was hardly anything in there. There was only like the skin, like the floor was dirt. And where the person slept, it was just like a rag, like a dirty rag, and then it had like a sheep skin, like a floor mat, and maybe a basket of things, and that's about it. And I'm all like, and I asked him, I'm like, you live here? He's like, oh yeah, this is where I live. I'm all like, oh really? He's like, yeah, this is my house. And I'm all like, oh wow, like he doesn't really have much. He doesn't really have anything, And I'm all like, oh, okay. And in my mind, I'm thinking, most of us have a really good house, right? Most of us live in a pretty good house. We have a lot of stuff, We got mirrors, we got toothpaste, we got clothes, we got extra pair of shoes, we got everything. But imagine if everything is taken away, what will you? Then you'll be like, wait a second. You start thinking about things. And the like a little funny thing was that when we were there, we were in this little camp, and you needed, I think I needed to use a restroom or something like that, and we went to this little place, and there's nothing there. It's just the hole, There's no mirrors, there's no water running, there's nothing. So you start in your mind, you start thinking like, hey, you know what? This place really doesn't have anything, and you start realizing, like, something so simple, but there's no toilet paper, there's not, you have to bring your own, all those little things. I know it sounds kind of funny, but each day we went out to visit different churches or different places. In our backpack, we'll take extra snacks and water, because we can't really drink the water from there because it's contaminated, and our system is not used to it. You get sick right away. So you gotta drink bottled water. So, and toilet paper, It sounds funny, but over there they don't have that. It's just, so it's like you go anywhere, you expect things to be there, but no. So I'm thinking, hey, you better, and hand sanitizer or something, or water to clean your hands, because hey, if you go somewhere, or if you go somewhere to eat or something, you're getting, there's nothing to clean yourself with. So it's something so simple, but when you go to a place where there's none of that, you're like, hey, wait a second. I'm so used to going to a restaurant, going to somebody's house where you have all these things, and you don't think about them, like, But that experience, I was thinking, I'm all like, man, it's those little things you start thinking about. So now going back to Joseph, Imagine everything is taken away, right? He's everything. Um, he had his father's love. He had his father's uh, food, because I'm pretty sure Jacob, he ate pretty well. He had his father's sheep to keep him warm. His father gave him what, clothing. He gave him a nice jacket of colors. You guys remember that? So he had a lot of things, and everything was taken away. Now, now that he's in a position that he has everything, he has a palace and everything. How is he gonna use that? And let's continue reading. And we left right there in 7, right? And God sent me before you to preserve you and posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. So now it was not you that sent me hither, but God, and he had me by my father to Pharaoh, and the Lord of all his house, and the ruler through all the land of Egypt. Haste ye and go to my father, and say unto him, Thou say the son Joseph, God had made Lord of all Egypt, come down unto me, tarry not. And thou shalt dwell in the land of Goshen, and thou shalt be near unto me, and thou to the children, and thy children's children, and thy flock, and thy herds, and all that has haste. So what's going on? So now that he has all these things, Joseph has all these things, right? Everything was taken away from him. Now God gave him all these things back, even more. He's rich, right? He's the second in command. He's what is he saying? He's not even now he's giving it back to his people. He told his brothers to go, right? And bring everything, your flocks and everything. So they can dwell, because the famine was still going on. There was still a lot of famine. Back then there was no Walmart, if there was no food, if there's no toilet paper in Walmart in Paso, I'm gonna go to Soledad. No, it wasn't like that, Over there, if you had enough food, you don't eat, you die. Simple as that. There was no really commerce, there was no shops, there was no stores really. People traded, but if everybody around your area is in famine, there's nothing to trade. If you guys know a little bit of ancient history, life was very cheap back then. People didn't value life as much. The only thing that people value much was family and their name. So when a family couldn't, if they owe money or they were starving, and they go to let's say they would have gone to another place and they had no money. Well, they try to trade in flocks, right? Like their sheep, their camels, whatever. But if they didn't have that, they try to trade in whatever they have. Maybe some good clothes, some jewelry, handmade jewelry. And if they didn't have none of that, a lot of the people, especially in the Canaanites back then, I read in history, they will trade in their children. They'll sell their children. That was the only way. If you had 5 or 6 children, you have to sell 2 or 3. To slavery or the people there. And you know who were the first ones? The women. Because the women were considered second-class citizens. So the daughters were the first ones to be sold, especially if they were virgins and not yet married. They were easily sold because they were not considered that valuable back then, That's why there was a lot of fixed marriages, It's not like the girls decided back then. So if there was this guy or this king or this guy had a lot of food, they're like, well, how many daughters do I have? Well, I have 2 daughters. Well, okay, I'll give you 2 of my daughters and give me all this. Oh, yeah, for sure. That was very common thing back then, So now the good thing that if we read the story, Jacob had silver. He had silver. So they paid the Pharaoh. If you going a little bit back to the story, but Joseph, remember, he returned them the money and then he hid it between their in their bags. Do you guys remember? And then they accused Benjamin of having it. A little bit of backwoods story. So that's why all that already happened. So that's why they're already in Joseph's palace. But going back to I was reading, and let's continue right there at 10 and 11. And there would I nourish thee for thee, and there are 5 years of famine, and thou household and all that has come to poverty. And behold, your eyes seen, and the eyes of my brother Benjamin, that is in my mouth that speak unto you. And ye shall tell my father all of my glory in Egypt, and all of that I have seen, and all that shall has bring down with my father. So what is Joseph saying? It says right there, and tell my father of all my glory. Whose glory? Who is he talking about? Joseph, Joseph. Jacob. The last time I saw him, maybe he was like 20 years old, scrawny little kid. It could be. Sheep clothing, big hair, maybe. Dirty. Now he's what? The Egyptians wear a lot of the white clothes. So imagine white clothes. I'm pretty sure he had a huge jewelry or gold, because Egyptians love gold and all that stuff. So he had all these jewelry, all these very silk. They use a lot of silk, but a lot of silk clothing. Shave, because the Egyptians were big on hygiene. They shave. Maybe he had the eyelids. Those eyelids that they wear. Those were to cover the sun. If you guys didn't know, it was not just as a fashion thing, but the eyelids the Egyptians put in their eyes, it was so the sun didn't reflect. So when the sun hits your face and you're like, your eyes kind of squeak. So that helps to protect your eyes from that. That's why the football players, they wear it right here on their cheeks. So, he had all this. So he was a completely different man. So he's telling his brothers, hey, tell them everything that I've done, everything what I am, so you guys can see where I'm at. And let's continue at then 14. And he fell upon his brothers Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept upon his neck. Moreover, he kissed all of his brethren, and he wept upon them. And after all that, the brethren talked with him. And the fame therefore was heard in Pharaoh's house, saying, Joseph, brethren are come. And it pleased Pharaoh well and his servants. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, say unto thy brethren this, do ye let your rest and go get you and your land of Canaan? No, your beasts. Thou leave your beast and go get unto the land of Canaan, and take your father and your household, and come unto me, and I will give you the good of the land of Egypt, and they shall eat the fat of the land. So, after Joseph is trying to give his family, everything that he has, right? He's like, oh, come here, everything. And he, as you can see, he's weeping and everything. I guess the Pharaoh hears about it. About what all the commotion. And Pharaoh is all like, oh, good for him. Let him stay there. It's good. It's good that his brothers came. No, he actually was like, you know what? I actually want to even do better. Pharaoh goes and tells his servants, hey, actually, you know what? Come to the land where there's even much better. Eat and get fat with the land. Give him the best of the best. So back then, the people, land was a very precious thing, especially in Canaan. There was a lot of desert, so it's not like here where you see a lot of like green and stuff. Back then it's very, very dry, very desert. When me and Venus, we went to Mount what do you call that place, Masada, over there in Israel. It's desert, it's dry, there's nothing there. It's like desert and desert and desert and desert and desert. And you think like, hey, you know what? Like, I don't know how people can even live here. It's all dry and desert. There's nothing there. And so, like, Egypt was in a place where there was like, the Nile River. So it was very green. It was very hard to find good fertile land back then. So for all the years, if we know Abraham and Isaac and stuff, they always wanted a land, right? They always wanted a place where they can call their home. We were talking about that in the morning, right? And when I was reading years ago the story, I was even thinking that maybe Jacob thought that this was the land that was promised to them. They're like, you know what? Maybe God told Joseph for us to move to Egypt, and that's where we're going to end up being and multiplying, because that's where the good land it is. And I was thinking maybe they thought it was going to be the land. But later on, of course, we found out that it wasn't, right? But that's why I'm all like, I was thinking maybe, they thought that they were fulfilling the promise from Abraham, that God was going to give them a land where milk and honey, remember? But that's why we were reading, that's why I was saying the giver to give. Joseph was giving. And not only Joseph, but what? But Pharaoh was giving, right? So let's go to, now let's go right here to, what do you call, Psalms? One 103. And let's read verse 10 to 14. So we're talking about the giver, right? To give. And and we were reading about how Joseph, right, was given a lot of things at the end, and he decided not to keep it. He decided to what? To give to, right? To his family and stuff. You guys are ready? And he hold not dealt with us after our sins, nor reward us according to our iniquities. For as heaven is high above the earth, so great is his mercy towards them that feared him. As far as the east is from the west, so far he's removed our transgression from us. Like a father pitch his children, so the Lord pitied them for that feared him. For he knoweth our frame, he remembereth that we are dust. So what is he saying? That what? That God has given us what? He's given us grace. That he has forgiven our what? Our sins and iniquities. That we are like his children. That he will protect us. And yet we have to remember that we're just dust to him. But because we were made from dust. But now God has made us what? His eternal children. Because after our flesh is it's done, it's out of this world, our flesh becomes what? Dust. But the reward that he gives us is what? It's eternal. So what's your giving? What have you given, right? That are you proud of something? Are you proud of something that you ever given in your life? And yet more, have you ever given something and yet you got no reward for it? I have. And sometimes that person, there's been moments in my life where I've given things and people have no idea I've given to them. Or there's been times that I've given things and people know about it, but they haven't even said thank you to me. It's happened. Have it happened to you guys? And now, how do you take it? Do you take it like in a bad way or in a good way? Some say, well, it depends how much. Well, right? Well, that's the thing. And that's a human thing. That's a human thing for us to think like that, Oh, I gave him so much and he didn't even say thank you and stuff. Yeah. And that's a human thing for us to feel like that. And that's where the danger could be. Because what's the thing that mostly happens to us? We give something and, sometimes we expect maybe a thank you. And then we don't receive nothing, or the person doesn't even acknowledge it, And then we're like, nah, you see what happens for giving things? Nah, I shouldn't give nothing anymore. Well, Or your time. That's another thing too, especially now. Time, they say time is precious, right? And time can even be worth more than money. Because it's something you can get it back. I can give, Paulie $100, but I know that tomorrow I'm going to make them, But my time, if I give them a day, I can't make that day, 8 hours, I can't make them. I can't make that day anymore. If I have other things to do, I can't. So some people, especially, and this is the crazy thing. Right now, we're in a level where money is worth more than time for us right now because we need money. But if you think about it in a way that like multimillionaires and billionaires think, because I've read a lot about them, people that have a lot of money, their time is more precious now than their money in a way. Now they don't go anywhere unless they're getting paid or there's something big. But millionaires and billionaires, artists, they don't waste their time. They're very strict on their time. And if they go to an event or anything, it has to be because either they're the ones getting the attention or not at all, right? Like they don't even like I don't have to go there. I don't need the money. So if there's somebody is coming to a place, what does everybody do? Oh yeah, you know. But they're giving their time because their time is precious, right? So Trump, like one example, right? He has everything already, now he gives what his time. So everywhere he goes, hey, he's giving his time. He's going. It's funny because he went to this restaurant in Miami, and he just showed up, and people were all surprised, and people were eating. They're like, "Oh my god!" And I remember that he got up. He's like, everybody gets a free meal here, you know, and everybody was happy. But could he afford it? Of course, but he doesn't now. But he's not even thinking about. Oh wait, there's only let me see, 100 people here. He's not even thinking about that anymore. He's just thinking about his time. His time is more precious now. And that's how it is with those kind of people. But now going back, have you ever given time? Is your time precious? Maybe your money is precious. It's funny. Some people, maybe their car, they're giving their car as a loan, I don't, whatever it is in life, we precious something that is for us, right? And we give it. But it says that it's much greater for us to give something than to receive, right? It is more rewarding for those that give than those that receive. Because the one that gives is able to give because they have plenty of. But the one that receives, he doesn't have anything. So he has, he's bound to whatever the giver is giving to that person. So now that as Christians, how is our heart when somebody asks for something, or a stranger, somebody that you don't know, It has happened to me, people, ask you for money, in the street. I know that now a lot of people they don't carry money because they carry cards, right? And they're like, oh, I can, but then sometimes you're like, well, if they're next to a McDonald's, well, I'll buy you a McDonald's for something. I remember a couple of years ago, I went to a McDonald's in Salinas. I was delivering, and I stopped there because I think I was gonna go all the way to Sacramento. It was gonna be a long drive. I can't remember, and I stopped in McDonald's in Salinas. I was gonna get something on the way, so I could be on my way. And when I got there, they have those automatic menus where people order food, right? So I'm ordering my food, right? I do my menu thing, and you get your ticket, right? So I'm waiting, and there's this guy, and he looks like maybe homeless, and he's trying to order food, and while he's trying to order food, he's paying with change, dimes and pennies and stuff. So I'm all right there, waiting for him, and well, next thing you know, it's a lot of change. I don't know how much the food it was, but it was taking a while. So it took so much time, and the person in the front I can tell they were getting very anxious. That even I got my food already, I didn't order a lot of stuff. I got my food, and that person was still trying to verify if the amount was correct. So I was about to leave, and I'm all like, you know what, I already ordered my food. I pay with my card. This person can't even barely finish, and you can tell that person right there is like, oh, come on, hurry up. So I'm all like, you know what? I went there and I'm like, hey, what are you trying to order? And the guy's, oh, I'm trying to get a McChicken and a soda, but I don't think I got 3 cents or something like that. I'm like, you know what? I'm like, put all your change back. I'll pay for it. He's like, oh, really, really? And the guy was like, really gonna do it? I'm like, yeah. Like, how much is it? Like, okay, boom, 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 boom. All right, here. I'm like, oh, thank you, damn. Like, yeah, here you go. I give him the ticket. And then I'm like, yeah, I'll be on my way. I'm like, oh, no, yeah. Oh, thank you. The guy was all happy. So I left. But the funny thing is that the person that was paying was like, what the hell just happened? Like, I'm counting all this money, and then just somebody comes in less than 3 seconds. Teep, But things like that, right? Like, then you feel good about it, right? You're driving, you're like, yes, and you feel good about it. But it's not always like that. It's not always like, it doesn't always happen like that. But how do you feel when you do something like that? You feel good, right? Yeah. Now we're supposed to feel even more knowing that God gave what? His life for us. Because he's the ultimate giver. God is the ultimate giver. You know, He's the one that gave everything for us, and because of that, we should always be reminded about how to live with with serenity and humility in this world. You know, because the world is a taker. The world takes everything. You go everything. The world wants to take your time. They want to take your money, and the ads everywhere. You know, ads here, waste here, buy this, buy that, and the whole world is about consuming, about taking everything, your time and everything. Oh, spend time in this and that. But if we let it, we get lost in that. That's why everything is trying to take your time. Subscribe to this, subscribe to that. Do this, do that. Have you noticed? Everything is about taking your time. But how many time do we spend with God? That's the question. I remember when I was when I was growing up, even in high school, I'm all like, well, how much entertainment was there back then? You had to literally go to the library and because if you need an internet, you need to go to a library and use a computer, or if you have internet at your house. And even if you have internet at your house, the videos took forever to load. If you guys remember back then, to see anything, you gotta wait until it loads up, and you're wasted. You're like, I remember I'd be like, you know what? Or sometimes I'll pause it and wait until it loads up, and then an hour later it's like, oh, it's halfway. That's good, But now everything is so quick, so now you can watch videos fast and fast and fast, and then and next thing you know, it's already been an hour, 2 hours. It's just crazy how everything is so fast and so consuming. The hours go so fast and everything. But at the end, with the whole world, with taking everything, if even and it's okay, even if we work hard in our jobs and everything. But at the end of the day, with all that we get extra, because I feel like all of us here have extra. We all have extra shoes, extra food. We all extra. I mean, how much of that do we give back? When we could, when somebody asks. Because I feel like at least all of us in our lives are gonna have that opportunity where somebody's gonna ask, maybe for $1 or $2. It depends, and in that moment, how are you gonna respond? It's happened to me just too, and that one time I was on the freeway, and somebody was asking. I think somebody had a sign that said, "God loves you" or something, or "Jesus loves you" or something like that. And the person was pretty beat up, you can tell. And I saw him, and I'm all like, and it was a while back, and I remember I'm like, oh, should I give him money? And I was debating. I don't even know why, but it's those moments where you start debating, right? And I'm all like, and I was thinking in my head, some people put in the signs, oh, I don't want to fake it, I want a beer, or some people say, anything helps. But, once in a while you'll find somebody that puts like Jesus or God, So I was thinking in my head, this person actually, he's trying to acknowledge God at least. And while I'm trying to get my I'm like thinking like, let me see if I have $1 or something. Somebody in front of me gives him money. And then I'm like, okay. And then I drive past him, and I'm all like, wait a second. Just because that person gave him something, that means that gave him an excuse for me not to give him anything. So I felt like I was out of the hook, like they say. So after that, I didn't really feel very good. I feel like somebody else took the credit for me. Has it ever happened to you guys? Like I could have helped that person, but somebody else beat you to it, and you're like, oh, that's great. But then you're like I waited for somebody. At least it's happened to me. So because of my hesitation, I didn't give him anything. The other person did. And and you miss that opportunity because you don't know how the person is, but it's things like that we go in life, and not until you start realizing that if you have something, if you got a little bit of extra and you give, that's already a blessing for each one of us. So that's why when I was reading Joseph, he had everything, and when his brothers came, he could have easily thrown them in a dungeon. He could have locked them up, and or he could even give them no food or anything and send them back. But he didn't let his anger, his all of his life's troubles deter him from doing the right thing. And that's something that I want you guys to know today. Amen. Great. Do you guys have any questions? Jaden, nothing? Well, I hope you guys learned something today. Next time there's an opportunity, Happens. All right, let's stand up and pray then. All right. Thank you, Lord, for today's sermon, Lord. I pray, Lord, that today's sermon help every single one of these young persons in this room, that you give them a heart of a giver, that if an opportunity arises in their lives, that they're able to give, and it should be for the glory of you, that you keep giving us a humble heart so we can give to those that are unfortunate. Please, Lord, do not take that giving heart away from us. Let us be unselfish in this world and give us as much as you have given us, Lord, in this world. I pray, Lord, that you give each one of us a humble spirit so each good deed does not go unjust. I pray that in your name. Amen. All right. Thank you, guys.